I'm Pastor Peter Lobmiller, and I want to thank you for joining me for the Sunday Morning Faith Start. Ladies and gentlemen, start your faith engines. Well, I hope they're already running, but get them ready. Get them up to cruising speed. We are going to break some faith speed limits this morning. And when you hit that church door, you're going to want more. You're going to have more, but you will get more. Many years ago, I had a call late night from a very angry Sunday school teacher at a church. I'm not even sure I was aware of the church, but someone in his church had gone to one of my meetings I'd been doing, and it was a healing meeting, I guess. And he called and he wanted to argue with me that God no longer heals. Didn't matter if people got healed or not. He said God no longer heals. And so we started talking back and forth a bit. And he said, if God was willing to send his son to save us, we should be willing to be sick for him. Well, I said to him then, well, that'd be fine, but Satan is the author of sickness and disease. You can't be sick for God. Doesn't do him any good. Well, if you want to do something for God, get your healing. Well, he didn't like that. And he was mad and things didn't go well, and we hung up. Well, the Lord brought this up to me in these scriptures today, and I started to look at them. And let's go over here to Luke, the 5th chapter, 17th verse. I'm going to be in Young's literal translation. And it happened on one of the days, even he was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting by, who were coming out of every village of Galilee and Judea and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was there for the curing of them. Now, the chapter right before this tells us that Jesus was healing the sick, and even though he told people not to tell anyone about it, they were telling everyone. His fame was spreading. People were coming to the meetings to get healed. Well, here he is teaching, and every time, and this ought to tell you, every time that we're being taught the word accurately, every time that I'm teaching the word, for example, accurately, it's all accurate, the power of the Lord will be there to heal. All you have to do is grab onto it. And behold, men carrying on a cot a man who was paralyzed. And they sought to bring him in and to lay him before him. And not finding a way through which they might bring him through the crowd, going up on the housetop, they let him down through the tiles with the cot into the midst in front of Jesus. They cut a hole in the roof, is what they said. They were so wanting that power of God, to hear that teaching of God, and there's some healing going on, that they cut a hole in the roof of that house. And they lowered him down in front of Jesus. Seeing their faith, he said to them, "Man, your sins have been forgiven you." Wait a minute. People have said to me, why did he say that? Oh, if you're sick, you must have sinned. If this and this. No. You're jumping to conclusions here. You're jumping to a conclusion. And when you jump to a conclusion, instead of seeing it in the Word, you're always going to make a mistake. Let's not make that mistake. And the scribes and the Pharisees began to reason, saying, "Who is this who speaks blasphemies? Who is able to forgive sins except God alone?" Now, they were all mad before because he was healing. They'd been there in some of the meetings and everything. They're all mad. They want to kill him because he's healing the sick. But now, all of a sudden, Jesus throws them a curve. And he says, "Your sins have been forgiven you." And they got mad about it. But knowing their thoughts, Jesus knew what they were thinking. Answering them said, "Why do you reason in your hearts? Which is easier to say, 'Your sins have been forgiven you,' or to say, 'Rise up and walk'?" Now, Jesus just issued a challenge there. I don't know if you caught that, but he just issued a challenge there. And in football talk, he's no longer playing defense. He's no longer, when they come up there and accuse him and everything like that, and he answers, he's not playing defense anymore. Now he's playing offense. He sat there, instead of giving them what they usually thought he was going to do, he said, your sins have been forgiven you. They're mad. They are especially mad because now it's not a case of healing. Now it's a case of actually forgiving sins. And like they said, only God can forgive sins. Who's this guy think he is? Jesus likens it and says, he essentially says it this way. Your sins have been forgiven you, or to say, rise up and walk. Which one's easier? Which one's easier to say? Because God's doing both. God's doing the healing. God's doing the forgiving. So which one's easier for you to say? Which one's easier for me to say? I believe God will do either one. Do you? No, you don't, because you're the ones mad because they're getting healed and mad because I said who can be forgiven. Now, here's the challenge. But that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on the earth to forgive sins. In other words, here's what he's saying. Watch what happens next. He said to the paralytic, I say unto you, rise up, take up your cot, and go to your house. And rising up once before him, taking up that which he was lying, he went to his house glorifying God. There's the challenge. In other words, I'm going to tell you right now, if he gets up after what I just said, then I can say the other. I can say who forgives sins. If only God can forgive sins, and I have just really loused up big time, God's not going to heal him. And he said there going, but he knows I can forgive you. I can sit there, I can say, God forgives you, and I can sit there and I can say, God heals you. And amazement seized all, and they glorified God and were filled with fear, saying, we saw wonderful things today. You know, that's kind of funny because that Sunday school teacher would have been there. I don't know what would have happened, but he would have saw a wonderful thing. And what was that? Well, he forgives and he heals. See the difference? He forgives and he heals. So that old argument, maybe you know someone who's tried to argue that with you. If God is willing to forgive, then we should be willing to be sick. He don't want you to have sin, and he don't want you to be sick. He forgives, he heals, he still does both. I'm Pastor Peter Loeb Miller, and I'll see you in church.